Adam Schiff is already working on his new Russia election hoax story for his own October surprise. The problem is that it is not Russia who is interfering in our election, it is Communist China. The Chinese Communist Party has been working long and hard the past 30 years to help mold American society into something more acceptable to them. You have heard, I'm sure, the term compassionate conservatism. What if I were to tell you that Beijing has been exerting their power and influence on our colleges and universities to teach our children compassionate communism? It's true, and I will lay it out for you on the monologue.
Great fences make good neighbors, all while providing safety, security, and privacy for you, your family, and your fur family. Backyard Works is your local fence, deck, and handrail experts, owned and operated right here in Sussex County. All materials are top quality and made in the USA. Backyard Works knows that home is where the heart is. Visit online to view stunning projects at backyardworks.net or call today for customer service that's unmatched. 302-703-9888.
The monologue is entitled, "The Man Who Asks a Question is a Fool for a Minute. The Man Who Does Not Ask is a Fool for Life." Throughout our lives, we have heard various quotes from Confucius. Confucius was a Chinese teacher, advisor, editor, philosopher, reformer, who was born about 551 BC. One of Confucius' many quotes was used as the title for this monologue. If we do not investigate what China has been up to in our country, my friends, we are fools for life. The Chinese Communist Party has been using, yes, I say using, the name and reputation of Confucius and what is known as Confucianism to infiltrate our institutions of higher learning to control the movements and speech of their children going to school here and to brainwash our children into accepting the ideals of Marxism and communism. The ironic aspect of Beijing's actions of establishing these Confucius communist indoctrination centers is that our government has been on board from the start with this, allowing the formation of these communist operation centers right on our overpriced college campuses. Of course, our enemies in Beijing have a far different opinion of these Confucius Institutes, as they are called. Here is the official Chinese explanation. Confucius Institutes are public educational partnerships between colleges and universities in China and colleges and universities in other countries. The partnerships are funded and arranged in part by Hanban, which is itself affiliated with the Chinese Ministry of Education. The truth about these Confucius Institutes could not be further from the explanation you just heard, nor could it differ more with the philosophies of one of the world's most famous philosophers. The truth is that these Chinese Communist Party operations only use education as a cover. In reality, they are used to monitor the activities and speech of Chinese nationals going to school here in the U.S. The Confucius Institutes are controlled not by those on the college campuses, but by various Chinese consulates across our nation who obviously are being controlled directly by the Communist Chinese Party in Beijing. The Confucius Institutes are also used as centers of Marxist and communist thought to re-educate American students about the advantages and fairness of their system and the unfairness of ours. Sound familiar? Do those Marxist insurgents destroying America's cities sound like Americans to you, or do they sound like products of communist brainwashing? Growing up in the 1950s and 1960s, we heard much from our government about Soviet brainwashing. Whether it was Francis Gary Powers or Lee Harvey Oswald, we were constantly being told by our government of the danger of communist brainwashing. But now, we invite communist brainwashing onto our college campuses and allow our children to be exposed to those working under orders from Beijing. Incredible! I suppose Joe Biden, Communist China's best bud, is going to put a stop to this, right? Think again. In an outstanding piece of investigative journalism, Epoch Times reporter Kathy He says that Beijing also utilizes these Confucius learning centers to conduct covert operations here in the United States to steal our technology. That does not surprise me at all. Would we ever have permitted Soviet learning centers inside the United States during our first Cold War? I think not. During my Boardwalk Potatoes podcast with Bill Colley on Saturday, Bill suggested that Beijing may be behind the coordination and funding of Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization, and Antifa, a left-wing terror organization. My friends, I think we have to consider that the evil George Soros may not be culpable here, that Communist China is by far the most logical suspect because of their hatred for President Trump and their fear of the damage that President Trump will do to them in his next term. Perhaps what is unfolding here and now is exactly what the Chi-Coms have been planning for all along. By brainwashing our young, impressionable young people away at college, that America is the great Satan, and that redistribution of wealth is the only fair way for our government to operate, they have created an army of communist insurgents ready to fight, ready to do battle with us imperialist dogs for the control of this nation. My friends, someone has filled the minds of these rich white kids with a skull full of mush. I suspect it's been the Communist Chinese who have done just that. On Friday, a story on Fox News showed that an organization, a Socialist Democrat organization called Act Blue, produced over $400 million in foreign, untraceable donations for Socialist Democrat candidates. If those donations are untraceable and they came from a foreign country, where do you think they came from? My guess is that if Confucius was alive today, he would have called us fools for permitting that communist Trojan horse to gallop inside our nation and establish remote operations from coast to coast. Another Confucius quote that caught my eye is, "If your plan is for 1 year, plant rice. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. If your plan is for 100 years, educate children." My friends, it looks to me that we have been planting rice for years, while the Chi-Coms have been building their plans for a world dominated by China on the education or brainwashing of children. And that is the monologue. What say you? The monologue was sponsored locally by Backyard Works, your premier fence, deck, and handrail source. Owned and operated here in Sussex County. Visit them online to view stunning projects at backyardworks.net and give the local experts a call for your free quote today. 302-703-98